Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again as we continue with our lesson overview of identity and access management. So we're going to pick up right where we left off. So let's go ahead and take a look now at multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is an additional layer of security on your root account or any IAM user that's able to log into your AWS account. What it does is it provides a randomly changing 6-digit passcode that you can use along with your username and password to ensure that you are an authorized person for logging into that account. Now, you may have seen something similar to this, and sometimes it might be called two-factor authentication. Let's say you want to access something like maybe an eBay account or some other service that you use on the internet. Banks are using this service a lot. So when you go to access the service, it sends you an email message or a text message that says, here's a code, and please enter this code on your login screen to ensure that you are who you say you are. So two-factor authentication has some limitations with it. What if your email accounts were to be hacked and someone had access to the two-factor authentication code that gets sent to your email inbox? Well, if that happens, then that person gets access to your banking information or whatever account that we might be talking about. Well, multi-factor authentication is similar to two-factor authentication with one exception. You can actually use a piece of hardware or a hardware key fob that you can say attached to your keychain, and that hardware key fob has that randomly changing 6-digit code. You associate that key fob with your account, and anytime you go to log into your account, you must have that key fob in order to log in. And it will present you with that 6-digit code, and then you can put that code into the login screen. Now, you also can do this using a virtual MFA device. So if you have a smartphone or a tablet, you can use an app like Google Authenticator and use that to present that randomly changing 6-digit code. So that code would pop up on your smartphone or tablet using the Google Authenticator app, and the process is the same so that you can get access to your account. Now, it does not replace your login. You still put in your username and password, but after you put in your username and password, it then prompts you for your MFA code. You then go to your virtual MFA device or your hardware key fob to get that 6-digit code. And then you have API keys for programmatic access. So you can go to what we call the command line interface, which we'll see as we continue to go through the course. And it allows you to specify credentials so that you can access resources from the command line. So right now we're working in the GUI, or graphical user interface, but sometimes you need to access from the command line, and we're going to see later on exactly how to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and click next. So now let's take a look at an example of a workflow for MFA. So you want to log into your AWS account. You provide your username and password. After you enter your username and password, AWS prompts you for that MFA code. You go to your key fob or to your phone or tablet, and it presents you with that 6-digit code. You come back to your computer and put that 6-digit code into the authentication box, and then it will grant you access to your AWS resource. So again, this is really just a higher level of security for protecting your account. Now, if you'd like to see an example of exactly how to do multi-factor authentication real time, there's actually a lesson in the AWS Essentials course that will walk you through setting up that multi-factor authentication, Google Authenticator, on an iPad. So that gives you an example that you can refer to in how to use MFA with that device. And I'll go ahead and include a link to that lesson that shows you how to use MFA on an iPad in the description section for this particular lesson. All right, so let's go ahead now and take a look at best practices for our IAM users. So IAM users, so as a best practice, again, you should not be using your root account to log into and manage AWS. You really should be creating an IAM user account to allow your users to manage your environment. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click manage user accounts here. Notice that I don't have any users. I'm going to add a user, and we're going to call this CCP admin, certified cloud practitioner admin. And notice down here that there are a couple of different types of access. There's programmatic access, and we talked about being able to use the command line interface. If you want someone to be able to have that level of access, to be able to use the API, the command line, or SDK, then you must check this box to grant them access to that. Also, if you want someone to be able to use the AWS console, then you need to check this box as well. And notice that it then says you need to create a password for that user account. I'm going to go ahead and set my own password here, or you can auto-generate a password, then require this password to be reset. I'm not going to require it to be reset because I'm going to just use this account myself, and then go ahead and click next for permissions. So again, when you first create that user account, it doesn't have any rights to access anything at this point. Now, setting up permissions for that user, you have a couple of different options. One of the first options is to add that user to a group. Well, we don't have any groups yet, so we're not going to add that user account to a group just yet. Then you have the ability to copy permissions of an existing user. And we can also attach a policy, which includes the permissions, directly to that user, or we can attach that policy to the group. Well, in our example, we want to attach the policy to the actual user. So we're going to go ahead for now and click attach directly to user. And notice that there's already a policy here called administrator access. So this one gives full access to AWS services and resources. So I'm going to just check that box and click next. Now I'm going to expand this just so you can see. Notice it says set a permission boundary to control the maximum permission this user can have. This is an advanced feature used to delegate permission management to others. We don't want to delegate permission management at this point, so we're going to just leave this as is. And then we're going to go ahead and click next for tags. Now, tags are an optional thing, and you'll see these as we go through the course where you can add tags. So let's say, as an example, if this user was going to be for a particular department, then I could add a tag here, call that tag department, and the value might be accounting. So that way I could potentially associate users with a particular department. It's just a way for me to organize and track resources that might be related. So I'm going to go ahead and click next for review. Everything looks good in terms of what I wanted to set for the rights, and then click create user, and that user account has been created. Now, when a user account is created, that user has the ability to download their access key ID and their secret key. You can also send those in an email. I'm not going to worry about these at this point because I'm going to go ahead and create a new access key and secret key that's not actually recorded on the video. You have the ability when you create your user accounts to note what the access key and secret key are and send that information to your users in the email. Here again is that console link for where your users are able to log in. Again, I'm not going to log in at this point because it will kick me out of my root login, which is where we are now. So in order to avoid that, I will show you how to log in as a IAM user a little bit later on. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and you can see that user exists. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard now and notice that now there's a green check mark there that I've created at least one IAM user. Now, when I created that user, I set that user as an administrative user. Well, typically you want to do that so that users are part of a group. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this next step, which is to create an IAM group. IAM groups are a collection of IAM users. So if you have a set of users that need the same level of permissions or access, you can put them into a single group and assign the access policy or the permissions to the group. This just simplifies administration for you, so you don't have to go to, say, 50 different user accounts and then assign those permissions. Instead, you're able to assign those permissions directly to the group. So I'm going to go ahead and click Manage Group here, create a group, and call this CCP Admins, and click Next Step. And here's our administrator access. Again, Next Step, and create to the group. So now our group exists, but I don't have any users in this group. So I'm going to select the group, click Add Users. There's our admin user that we created previously, and add that user to the group. So now this user has whatever permissions or rights that the group has. Now, yes, I did previously assign the permissions directly to the user, but again, that was just for demonstration purposes so that you could see it. As a best practice, the way to do it is to put the users in the group and then assign the permissions to the group. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the permissions tab so that you can see there's the access policy that's been assigned to the users. An access advisor is a more advanced topic that we're not going to cover in this particular course. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my users tab and now go back to my dashboard. And now you can see that we now have a group with permissions assigned to it. So these are one by one getting checked off. And then our last is to apply an IAM policy for passwords. So password policies allow you to specify things like strong passwords and to specify how often users have to rotate their passwords and whether or not they can reuse the same password or how frequently they can reuse the same password. So let's click on Manage Password Policy. And notice here it shows us that our minimum password length is 6 characters. We can change that. So let's change that to 8. Require at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase, one number, one non-alphanumeric. Allow users to change their own password. You can cause users' passwords to expire. Prevent password reuse. So basically, this is how long a user would end up having to wait before they can reuse that password. Password expiration requires administrator reset. You might use that in an instance where you have temporary users who work with you. Then the users have to contact an administrator to get it re-enabled. So obviously this is going to be something that is more labor intensive to utilize. But once you have whatever policies you want, you go ahead and click Apply Password Policy. Our settings, hit Dashboard again, and notice now all of these are green. So that covers our best practices for users groups and IAM password policies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next lesson.